Hello and welcome to Fellowship in Essential Oils. This week, we're exploring a flower that's one of the most spiritual, if not the most spiritual flower on this planet. When researching and learning about this flower that gives us an amazing oil, I found that it is sacred to gods in Egypt, Greece, Rome, Norse mythology, China, Japan, India, and probably other regions I didn't discover as well. We're going to be discovering and exploring today Blue Lotus. How are you today, Liz?
I'm very Blue Lotus today, thank you.
You've gone all out and you get an A for
I have,
effort today.
but also everybody needs to explain. Excuse my water lily eyes because they're just pouring. They're really watering from it. But anyway, so my idea was to channel the water, the Blue Lotus petal, and I was like, whoa, that's an Egyptian. That's what they do. That's what Egyptian eyes look like. So I thought that was fascinating.
Well done. I'm very, very impressed. Now, first of all, let's talk about this actual flower. The flower and the plant that we're talking about is native to the Nile, but unfortunately, it's not really located in the Nile anymore because the Nile's become too polluted. And now, because the aroma was so beautiful, it was exported to other parts around the world. And much of our blue lotus comes from places like India and China, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think China, Thailand, Sri Lanka, that's where the beautiful uh, plants come from, oils come from. Um, I think it's worth just picking up on something that you said earlier about how it's been used as a treasure in all those different religions. We need to be really careful that we don't mix it up with the normal lotus of like Hinduism and things like that, because that is a lotus, whereas the blue lotus isn't. It's a water lily.
Mm.
So whilst they are grown over there now, the plant really loves the tropical atmosphere and climate. When we see them in Hinduism and things like Shinto and things like that, that's not a blue lotus. That's not a blue water lily, which is what is in Egypt. It's a lotus, if I remember rightly, Nelembo nucifera, which did eventually make its way to Egypt, but not really until the Persian invasion, which is around about 500 BC. So anything pre that is not the same plant as you would see in India. So what we're talking about today is the one that yes you can get from Thailand and from Sri Lanka now, but not historically the Hindu treasured plant.
Yeah. So we always say that when you're not sure exactly what plant you're getting, we want to look at Latin names. So this is a member of the Nymphaea family, I believe.
Yeah, yes, Nymphaea caerulea, which is water lilies. And although there's lots of different types of water lilies, there's around about 70 different species. And interestingly, I live down the road from the National Collection of Water Lilies, and they don't have a blue water lily because obviously it can't grow here. But so, yeah, whereas the others are, they do look like water lilies. They have more rounded uh, petals. The blue lotus has very spiky petals, and it doesn't sit on the water in the same way as you would see. I say you would see. I would see in the UK because obviously I haven't seen water lilies in other countries. But ours sit quite squat on top of the water, on top of the lily pads, whereas the blue lotus had a tall stem and would hover above the water, and that becomes part of the mythology.
Yeah. One of the most magical parts of the mythology as well is some people say that it descends below the water each night, whereas that is not exactly correct as well. Once it has actually come above the water, it does stay above the water, but it will close as we start to get into the afternoon and the sun's getting towards its last few hours of light, isn't it?
Nearly. So what happens, what's really interesting from a bee priestess point of view, really is interesting to look at. The flower itself is like a trap for insects. So actually let's use mine. So we've got this like female bowl at the top, which gets really full of goo and like a sweet nectar. And it has what's called osmophones. So within the petals, it gives out this incredible fragrance of rotting meat, oddly, to attract flies, but also bees and beetles. But actually, there's none there. And so you've got this pool of nectar in the bottom, and then you've got up the side stamens, which are obviously the male sexual part. And so what happens is the first day they lure in the insects by going, oh, get me, there's loads of rotting meat and lovely things here, come in. So they climb over the stamens, which are absolutely covered in pollen, say the day before from another lily. Then when they go into the next lily the next day to get this smell, they get stuck. And so what happens is the pollen from the other lilies goes in and gets completely covered. And then what it does is it closes its petals at lunchtime and traps the insect there till the next day. And that's how it fertilizes itself. And then the next day it opens up and it goes, bye, see ya. And it goes off to but then as it climbs out, of course, it gets covered in the pollen again, which it takes to another, if it's not stupid and hasn't learned its lesson, go to another lily and gets fertilized again. So it's like this genius mechanism where it can't self-pollinate itself, although it is able to self-pollinate itself, which is fascinating from a priestess point of view, can self-pollinate, but it likes to do it with insects. So it has this trapping. So what happens is it will open at dawn, let out beetles, obviously, that got stuck in there, and it opens with the rising sun. As sun gets to 12 o'clock, it goes, okay, time to switch over, starts to close the petals. And as soon as it has been fertilized, then it will sink down under the water to become a fruit and spread its seed. But it will look like another one's come up or the same one's come up, because the next day another one will come up and do the same thing. So it looks like it's rising and falling, but actually it's this tremendous interaction with the insect world which is creating the magic, which is just fab for me.
It's an amazing flower. And I know as we have this conversation today, people are either going to be watching or they're going to be listening, and they're probably going to want to, I have to get some of this oil. Now, this is where we have to really look at where we're getting Blue Lotus Essential Oil from. And there's a bit of a story that you can find it on YouTube by Emily Wright, who's one of the founders of doTERRA Essential Oils. Now, she fell in love with the aroma of Blue Lotus about 20 years ago. And it was her passion to go, I need to find a high quality Blue Lotus Essential Oil that I can bring to the world and so that everyone can enjoy it. Now, everything she tested along her journey looking for this was adulterated. It was either had other things added to it, or it was just totally synthetic. And I have noticed in many of the lotus oils that I've bought throughout my lifetime, you can smell the chemical kind of essence into it. So it was just a few years ago that they found a very small operation in rural China that was producing true, unadulterated Blue Lotus oil. And doTERRA has partnered with them. They've actually built these massive ponds. I think there's 4 of them. And they are producing pure Blue Lotus essential oil. Now, doTERRA, who works with an independent third party called the Aromatic Plant Research Center, is constantly testing their oils. And once they've gone through this whole process of setting it all up, and they had, they knew that there's no sprays and nothing added to the oil, they got really excited getting ready to launch them. And they had the Aromatic Plant Research Center test the oils. And for some reason, there was plastic in there. And so they were, oh, we're not launching yet. And they went through absolutely everything. They took apart their distillation process. They were checking every O-ring, every little bit, and they couldn't work out where was this plastic coming from. And then eventually they realized when the ladies go out into the ponds and collect the lotus flowers and put them in a basket, that basket was made of plastic. And the flowers are just so sensitive, they're actually absorbing some of that plastic, before they were carried to be distilled. And so we now have to use cane baskets so that that plastic's not coming through. So that was the commitment that goes into the work of producing a pure Blue Lotus essential oil. You know, people often complain about prices of essential oils, but you know, we're often paying for quality in that way. The story about this development of these Chinese Blue Lotus flowers and this farm as well that I really love is it's in a rural area. And just like we have issues in Australia, I'm sure in the UK and many places around the world, there is a big struggle for farmers in rural areas across this planet. Everyone's moving into cities. And because we've been able to set up this operation in a rural area, it's actually keeping the town alive, keeping employment opportunities there, and people aren't having to sell up and go into the city to make an income. So not only are we getting an amazing essential oil, but we're supporting people locally there and keeping a town alive. And if you are interested in that, there will be links below where you can check out some more information. And wherever you are in the world, I can get you some of the Blue Lotus essential oil that I've been using for the last few years and absolutely love.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because it is a hard oil to get your hands on. And so it's really nice to know that there will be a big influx of this oil coming, because I think it is a really beautiful oil to work with. I came across it maybe about 3 years ago, just in passing. Somebody had said, "Oh, have you thought about it for dream work?" And I found an absolute, which I still use. It does smell different actually to the Blue Lotus essential oil. The essential oil is more ethereal, a bit like rose essential oil and absolute are different. But yeah, I don't think it's quite I don't think the essential oil is quite as heady, although I don't think the absolute smells actually that great. But it is stronger. And I found that just experimenting it was just made you feel quite magical all of the time. It is a really fantastic oil. And so when I was like, well, let's look at the history of this, and sort of veered down, I was like, whoa, you know me and Egypt, we're going into a place that's really magical here. It's everywhere. And then I became really, really hooked on, like, what can we do about this? So we'll talk a little bit about the medicinal qualities in a little bit, but it was part of my journey to what I want to do next year, which is I want to open a completely new business called Aromatic Mystery School. And it's really about oils that we don't really know that much about, and looking at the essential oils as magical tools, really. You know, we see people citing them, and then I think, well, how'd you get to that? That's a really strange decision. But also I'll see people going, I just don't understand anything about these correspondences. What, well, you know, this says this God, but then it says that God. How's that not the same thing? So really investigating that and looking at oils, but also working in community with other people to say, well, we don't know that much about this oil, let's really explore it together. And so in January, this will be the first one that I release. So if people are interested in really working in a different way with Blue Lotus, come on over. But let's talk about the physical side, because I won't get into that at all in the mystery school. I'll mention it. There'll be a small video on it, but I'm more interested in the journey that the mind goes on. What are we connecting with it? But in the physical, it's quite a difficult oil to pin down because there's not that much research into the plant. The research that's done into the plant is into constituents that will not pass through distillation, and so they're not in the essential oil. I'll be clear about that. But also, as a species, it's not that accessible to get your hands on, but it's one of those. The best way to explain it is, why do in science, why do we always have rodent experiments? Why do we do like experiments on rats first? Well, the reason for that is because the rats are very easy to change genetically within one generation. So you can kind of make an adjustment and go, right, oh, we need a rat that has Parkinson's, let's do that, and we can change it very easily in one generation. Well, actually the Blue Lotus is very similar, so it's very easy to cross pollinate. And to draw out certain qualities about, shall we make it more blue, shall we make it smell stronger, a bit like roses, you know how you can have loads and loads of different types of roses because it's easy to do. Well, with water lilies too. So if they were to really do deep investigations into the water lilies, somebody could go, yeah, but I want to adopt a new different strain, and then that would be mute. So we will never really pin down what a water lily can do. And so that's really quite frustrating from the point of view of somebody like me that's like, well, let's look at the symbology in ancient Egypt. It's everywhere. It's on every tomb. It's at every festival. They're making offerings of it. Why? Why? We can't pin it down. So that's why it's going to be quite interesting work to do together. But what they do know now is that the water lily itself, remember, not a lotus, different plant, the water lily itself has two really important constituents. It's called apomorphine and nuciferine. So apomorphine has been synthesized and now is being developed for a therapeutic for people with Parkinson's disease. It's very good for calming down the dopamine receptors so that they don't have the trembling, so that they don't stop, that it helps their memory a lot more. And also for those people who have schizophrenia, it looks like it may be useful for people with schizophrenia. And interestingly, and part of the reason they've got to that jump is because therapeutics for Parkinson's and therapeutics for schizophrenia both go through this dopamine receptor. So we know that apomorphine will interact on that receptor that can be problematic. And we also, so let's kind of just skip off that subject for a minute and say that one of the reasons why people are so fascinated in it is because there's an ongoing debate of, well, is it psychoactive or is it not psychoactive? And you'll see it written on the internet of, well, is it narcotic or is it not narcotic? Because people are talking about narcotics as in drugs, but narcotic means, does it make you go to sleep? No dispute, definitely makes you go to sleep. So it's definitely narcotic, but is it psychoactive? And the receptor that it works upon is the same one that maybe LSD and psilocybin works on. But what's interesting is it switches them off. So quite often people will add Blue Lotus flowers to smoke, for example, to roll-ups and stuff, to modify the effects of really strong trips. Blue Lotus goes, whoa, no, calm down. And if you do smoke it, then you kind of have this buzzing here, which I think is fascinating, because that is exactly where you see all of the flowers when you see the iconography. It's like brow chakra. So the idea that it makes you lucid dream, which I think is absolutely indisputed amongst people that use it, but not assured in clinical. I don't think they'll ever do scientific evidence into that, because what medicine's ever going to come of that, you know? So certainly for sleeping, and I would say again, those constituents don't pass through distillation, but the essential oil still does that. Still is fantastic for sleep, for dreaming, for anxiety, for calming, for lifting the mood. And also, if you look at water lily medicine as a herb, not necessarily blue water lily, but water lilies. Actually, in the UK, oddly, you can find it in any botanical, that this is very good for things like diverticulitis, colitis, digestive problems like IBS, where there is inflammation in the gut. And we know that there are constituents within the water lily herb that will soothe the gut. But does that pass through distillation? I don't know. And because I'm not a person that has those problems, I can't do that work myself to say, right, use the essential oil and let's see. So that's why I want to build this community of go, right, so have we got a poorly person with a poorly gut? How's this going to do with you? And pull this information. So, yeah, I think the other thing that you reminded me in a previous episode that we never recorded was how good it is for the skin. I'd forgotten to say that. And squalene is a tremendous constituent, very good for the skin. That does pass through distillation. And it makes you feel kind of smooth and waxy and clear, but I wouldn't say that it actually nourishes the skin as such while I've been using it. But yeah, if you're the kind of person that wants to feel a bit more beautiful, a bit more goddessy, Blue Lotus seems to be the way to go to me.
Very much so. And when I first was introduced to Blue Lotus, when I was living in the Middle East, so we know that the Middle East has rather wild weather, rather hot. And so you spend a lot of your time either, if you are outside, that's quite dehydrating in the skin. And if not, you're inside and everything is air conditioned. And we know that air conditioning is very dehydrating in the skin, which again dries out the skin. So I was using a lot of the Blue Lotus, feeling that it's having that experience with the squalene. And yeah, would fully agree with you that it was really good for helping just to kind of help to keep the skin feel a bit more hydrated. And, whether it was or whether it was a feeling, my skin survived that dry heat. So it was really, really beautiful for that. When it comes to dreaming, one of my favorite ways to use essential oils, I know Liz, she just throws everything in the bath and has a bath. One of my favorite things to do is to pop them on your feet at night. And I'll use immune oils, I'll use detoxification oils, but I also love to use dream oils. Now, my original favorite was juniper berry, but then there's a couple that have surpassed it. Coming in at number 2 is your Blue Lotus. And I find when I use Blue Lotus, it does enhance dreaming. Now, someone asked me recently, does it make you dream more or does it make you remember your dreams more? My answer to that is I don't know. I just know that I have more dreams or remember more dreams in that way. So just rolling it on the soles of your feet, rubbing it in a little bit can really, really help in that way. It has been confirmed with the testing that those psychoactive ingredients that Liz was referring to before do not pass into the oil. So you've got no worries of, popping it on yourself and seeing unicorns galloping around the lounge room. My number 1 oil, if you are wondering, gardenia, seems to always really kick in my dreams to a whole nother level as well. But this is still a really great one for that. The aroma, when you smell Blue Lotus, if you haven't smelled it before, we know it's a flower, but I'd love to know your opinion on this, Liz. It doesn't really smell like a flower per se. It's kind of got this green aroma to it. But if you like it, or as a spiritual tool, I think it's beautiful to anoint yourself in. And that can lead to a whole range of health benefits because if you're not wearing a perfume, which is one of the worst things we can spray on our body, this is a really great substitute for that. Now, I have seen bits and pieces that here and there about it can help with digestive complaints, it can help with muscular complaints. But if I've got a bellyache, if I've overworked it at the gym, I'm not rolling Blue Lotus on me. We've talked about over 70 other oils, and there's plenty in there that are going to be much more effective at that. But for dreams, for skincare, for a natural fragrance, for me, that's where Blue Lotus really excels.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And I can add some more to what you said about the dreaming because there's a lot of people who've investigated this in terms of dream work. Those who perhaps don't know that I'm a Melissa priestess. Melissa priestesses do many different things, including dream incubation. And so dreaming in community to try to bring to either read what's going on in the environment around you, but also to dream a new world. And what Blue Lotus is very good for is for lucid dreaming. So this feeling that you are awake but in a dream. And so you can actually switch your dream, which takes practice and learns. And actually, oddly, I learned it when I was about 9 years old from a psychiatrist of how to switch my nightmares off. And that sort of has adapted over a lifetime where I didn't even realize that I was evolving the mechanism to do it. It was only when I started doing dream work I was like, wait, what? Couldn't have been how I've learned to do it, but it's evolved. But so the idea that you can actually tell yourself within the dream to do certain things. So in mine, as I say, it was switching off nightmares. But in the same way, right, fly over there, go across to that place, turn up in that place and mold your dream into what you're trying to happen. And as I say, Melissa Priestess is doing this in community, so they do it in circle. So you quite often see, if you look back in history, for example, the cult of Asclepius, that was how they did their healing, that they would heal within the dreams. So Blue Lotus is very good for that, but also, yes, as you quite rightly say, remember in your dreams. And yes, you can use it as an essential oil, but you could also drink the tea. And the tea is relatively cheap. You know, you can pick it up for about a tenner for a packet. And when you get the tea, it comes, well, mine does anyway, as the whole flower, which I just think is absolutely beautiful. You put the warm water in there. Oh, she opens up in the water. So, you know, when you're watching that, it's almost like a ritual thing itself to be able to look how beautiful it is. But I think that if I were to sum up, and there's lots of strands that this goes in from my lectures on my school, which you'll be able to access, say, in January. But we talk about the importance of our five senses, you know, hearing, seeing, touching, smelling, etc. Sixth sense we know, but also seventh sense. And I really feel that the Blue Lotus really taps you into the seventh sense, which is the sense of beauty, of aesthetics, of really seeing what's gorgeous around you. You know, you really move from 3D reality of paying bills into, gosh, I never even noticed, like the story of the Beatles, you know, with it, you know, you wouldn't have ever thought to look there to see that beautiful, but when you watch it, and incidentally, it's worth searching David Attenborough. He shows the video of the giant water lilies in the Amazon, and their flowers are like a foot across. And he can see all the beautiful leaves coming up and see it in slow motion and really experience, God, that's clever nature, you know. And I do think that that's one of the main gifts of the blue water lily, that you would come and you would go, gosh, how amazing that you can even get a water lily that's blue, you know? So, yeah, I think if you are quite melancholy and you're becoming a bit cynical and a bit moody and very anxious, for example, all of those are very good ways to use Blue Lotus and say, right, show me something different, show me something different. The equivalent to on Facebook, which I have to say, it really annoys me when people do it, but show me the last picture on your camera reel, you know, because I want to see all the flowers and stuff. Well, boring, scroll past it. But in real life, yes, show me the magic, you know, and Blue Lotus does that. Yeah.
Well, let's have a bit of a look at the plant and how that kind of translates into spiritual and holistical kind of approaches. Now, one thing I like to share about Blue Lotus, I want you to imagine that we've got a Blue Lotus and we pour 5 liters of vinegar on it. What would it smell like? Or maybe we get 5 liters of sugar water and we pour that all over it. What would it smell like? Well, in both cases, it would actually still smell like a lotus flower, because a lotus flower is aquaphobic. It repels other liquids. So how this translates when we're working with Blue Lotus is it actually allows us to also repel those things. So what I mean by that is when people throw vinegar at you in the way of criticisms, insults, and trying to drag you down, that just rolls off you like water off a duck's back. But also when people shower you in sugar water and with compliments and flattery and embellishments, that doesn't impact you either. And sometimes people go, well, hold on, Adam, I need to listen to the good stuff because that's how I build my self-esteem and feel good about myself. But we see what happens when people are showered in too much flattery and compliments, maybe, you know, rock stars or sports players. It goes to their ego and they run off the rails. So what Lotus Flower allows us to do is not listen to the negativity or the positivity, because there's always going to be people that love you and hate you. In fact, it allows you to just listen to one person, yourself. Because we grow up in a world where we're constantly trying to please people and get that sugar water and avoid that vinegar. But in doing that, we lose track of where we're going. And so I find this is a really powerful way to work with Blue Lotus to help you connect with your own spirit, your own inner guidance, your own path, because we're all on a different path, a different quest. And Blue Lotus is a really great one for not being pulled and influenced by people. You can still take it on board, but you can come back to work with Blue Lotus at the end of the day and go, what resonates with me? Was that truth? And is that my truth? And so this is an amazing flower for helping you find your own spiritual truth and stay on your spiritual quest, which is individual to you.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And there was a program on the BBC. I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 90s perhaps. Looking, it was very dated now, but there was some doctors who actually did similar to what I'm thinking of doing, really, getting archaeologists together, doctors, and analysing different plants, psychoactive plants. And they did an episode on Blue Lotus. And actually, one of the lady who's like the doctor on it is one of the pioneers in the Parkinson's medicine that it's gone on to do. And they had some students from the university partying with Blue Lotus, eating it and putting it into alcohol to drink it, and then monitoring. And whilst they all felt it doesn't really have that much of a psychoactive, I'm certainly not tripping. I do feel like I just want to party. I just feel like, oh, my head is really bright and I'm up there and I don't want to go to sleep. I'm very relaxed. I just feel very chilled, but my brain's really sparking lots of ideas, and I want to chatter and I want to talk and I want to sing and I want to dance. And you're like, well, yeah, you can really see how that would be interesting in a festival in Egypt. But I do think that this idea of, right, I can think really clearly, I can really be quite imaginative and creative, and incidentally, that's definitely in the mythology, this creativity. But I'm chill, you know? And so this was one of the reasons why I thought, well, maybe I should pick an oil that I know more about as the first one for January. But they used Blue Lotus as a symbol for the new year. Now their new year is in June, July, summer solstice. And it couldn't be more different. I mean, it's like -2 in the shed here today. It's going to be very cold. It's a very different kind of a new year. But this idea of new starts, you know, that is very much. Also, it comes down in the night and then it comes up in a new day, and we're having a new day. This new starting afresh. I think really ties in really well with New Year. So I hope people will come and have a go. And I'm going to put the details to the link to that. And just to let you know that things are not ready on the website at all. But since we are friends here now, you'll be able to go in and go, oh, Liz, you need to edit that bit a bit. But you'll be able to see what's going on. Have you got anything else you want to say about Blue Lotus? Because there's something I want to say about something else, but I don't want to hijack.
Oh, well, I've got plenty more to say about Blue Lotus, but if you want to keep going on what the
I'm
tangent
going to come back then. So you, what else? Because I'll come back.
Okay. Well, as you were talking then, and I'm trying to kind of assimilate what I've said and what you've said, Blue Lotus is kind of saying to me, one of the things that it helps us to do is pursue our bliss. And I think bliss might be a really nice word. Bliss doesn't need to be that kind of totally off with the fairies in that way, but I think it can be really great for that. Now, the other thing is when you look at the book that I wrote with my good friend Vanessa Jean Boscarella Ovens, Gift of Essential Oils, what we did and what I found as I was working through the different oils is where the oil is gifted from, connects it to a different element. So our first chapter is all on oils that are gifted from woods, barks, and roots. We found that really resonates with the earth element. We found that oils that come from leaves and needles have a strong connection, and their energy is very much to do with the air element and the mind. Fruits and berries, very much to do with fire. Resins and spices and seeds were very much to do with akasha, and that leaves flowers to do with the water. Now, what flower is more connected to water than Blue Lotus? There isn't one. So it is kind of the epitome of the water element in that way. And there are very few oils. There are a few other ones, the seaweed absolute and a couple that grow near water. Celery seeds, another one that we talked about recently. But this is a real encompasses that water energy. And being such a spiritual oil, it really helps us to lift in that watery realm or that emotional realm. So when you think about the lotus, does it get buried in the water? No, it rises above the water. And I've found with its blissful kind of capacity, it is an amazing essential oil to work with for what I call emotional mastery. Now, our emotions, I see them as being, I guess, our servant. And Blue Lotus helps us to be like that regal queen or that regal king that sits on the throne in control of our lives. Now, when something goes wrong, we'd want the queen or the king. You know, an emotion comes up, something's not feeling quite right. A subject comes and alerts us that something's not right. We wouldn't want the queen or the king to go, oh no, and run off the throne. Let me worry about that and get drowned in that emotion. We'd want that queen or that king to go, thank you for letting me know about that. I will see to that and I will make sure that there are adjustments made. And so I'm not suggesting that Blue Lotus makes us disconnect from our emotions, but if someone is finding that they tend to drown in their emotions or their emotions are running their life rather than they are listening to their emotions and taking guidance from them, Blue Lotus, I find, can be really, really powerful for this. Now, not only for you, but also if you tend to be an empath, I often talk about juniper berry being really great. It's helping you be a conduit rather than a container, allowing you to bring in that emotional energy, feel that, take the wisdom, and then let it go rather than hold on to it and drown it in it as well. Blue Lotus is another beautiful one for that kind of emotional protection or just any kind of spiritual protection, in fact. Now, you could anoint it, and you might want to anoint it over the arms, over the shoulders, wherever you're kind of drawn to anoint it. And I find almost visualizing this royal blue cape, which helps again, brings that sense of regality, that sense of spirituality, but that sense of being in control and magical as well. So that's a really powerful energetic, I guess, visualization that you could use to protect yourself and to empower yourself against your emotions and other people's emotions by using Blue Lotus.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly right in terms of water element. Although if you look at other occult documents, for example, they will say water and air because of how far it sits above the water. So as I say, these water lilies that I see, water's here, it sits like a little cup, but this goes long, straight stem and quite high above the water. And so you're quite right, water element, so control of emotions, but that would also water control of thoughts. And I definitely think that in terms of lucid dreaming and how you can actually direct your thoughts, then yeah, so air element as well. And I just loved the way that he described it was lovely.
Oh, thank you. Now, we mentioned the Latin name before, starting with Nymphea. You, of course, do a little bit of work with nymphs. Would this be a good oil to work with the nymphs?
I think no, oddly. And I keep going, well, what have I missed really? Because it sounds like it should be, doesn't it? But I think the difficulty is that the name comes from so many changes over time. So Nymphea water lily, as you say, is definitely about nymphs, but it's not really the same channel as the nymphs in terms of thinking, accessing that wisdom code. We will talk a little bit about the nymphs in the Blue Lotus lectures, but so let's just jump in. So there's a story that obviously there's loads of nymphs and they change into lots of different things. And if you look at the internet and you try and say, well, which nymph was changed into a water lily, they'll just keep saying there was a nymph who changed into a water lily. But when you channel down, actually it was not a nymph that turned into a water lily. So what happened was Hercules, on his journey with to find the golden fleece with the Argonauts, killed a king. The king was left with a son called Hylas, and he adopted the son, and it's very sort of homoerotic journey with this young boy that he's both his apprentice and his lover. And they get to an island, and Hercules says, right, we need fresh water. Go to that spring, fresh water. And Hylas goes to the spring, and he sees these nymphs, just beautiful, beautiful nymphs. And you could look this up in terms of a picture. There's a beautiful pre-Raphaelite picture by J.W. Waterhouse of Hylas and the nymphs. It's really beautiful to look at. And he used two models to make these incredibly beautiful women. They're white water lilies, presumably because they're very white bodies, whiter than mine even. But still, so he's looking at them. And there's sort of three versions of the story. He goes missing. Does he dive down with the nymphs into the water? They say that he fell in love and was married, or another one says that they dragged him down into the water. A bit like the Beatles, I gotta say. It's, you look at it and you think it's very like the pollination story. But this is one of the stories about the nymphs. You can find it in Ovid's Metamorphoses. There's lots of stories about, right through Metamorphoses, about nymphs being raped. And there's a tremendous classicist called Stephanie McCarter who's rewritten it so that you can see it was a rape. Rather than he made love to her. No, she didn't want it. She want, in this one, it's the nymphs that do the raping, the deception, the drawing down, and it's quite traumatic a story. So I think actually, no, I don't think I would want to go into go accessing the nymphs this way, because I don't want their treacherous side, and that's the only side you can see in Greek mythology through the lotus. So no, I think, but obviously I do lots of work with nymphs, and that is something else that I'll be teaching in the school, but we will not use Blue Lotus, no.
So I may be splashing around in the water looking for an answer here, but what about the merfolk, the mermaids? Do you think Blue Lotus would be connected to them?
I know nothing about mermaids except that they're in the sea and this is a clear water plant.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. I guess, yeah, there are lots of different water elementals. There could be one that could connect us with Blue Lotus. That's something we might need to dive in a little bit more. Another creature.
I think if I was going to try and do mermaids, which I probably won't because I have no affinity whatsoever, but I think I'd start with seaweed. Absolute.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure, definitely. One being or creature that I would associate it with. Let me talk you through a bit of a journey here, where I think that an amazing time to have your Blue Lotus out. It's a special lunar event, and we want to have something special for it. It's a blue moon. Now, a blue moon is unlike a blood moon. A blood moon is when the moon will actually turn a shade of orangey red, and that's due to an eclipse with the sun. But a blue moon, the moon is not turning blue. It is basically a calendar event. Now, some people say it's when we have two moons in the same calendar month. I work on a slightly different agenda because our Gregorian calendar isn't in alignment with the moon, the sun, and all the actions. It's just some numbers that we've kind of picked. So for me, a blue moon is when you get a full moon and then a sequential full moon in the same zodiac sign. Now, that can happen at different times throughout our lifetime in different signs, and that is seen as being a rather auspicious event. So you might have one full moon in Gemini, and then the next full moon, the moon is still in Gemini. So that's a blue moon. This is the time when we've been focusing on one aspect of our lives, and we get to kind of double up and enhance that with this double full moon energy. And this is a great time to work with Blue Lotus then, to really connect with what is my divine path? How do I spend that? This is just on another full moon. Now, a creature that I pair with that is the unicorn. Now, horses ascend, and I believe have a great spiritual path that they have helped humanity with on this planet. Now, sometimes you might ask, what is the most important animal to humanity? And some people might go, oh, well, dogs. Dogs have been man's best friend and help with hunting and different things like that. Or maybe cats. Cats have helped with health and protection and the wise women, especially in Europe and Egypt and so on. But if you think about horses, they've helped with agriculture, they've helped with travel, they've helped with warfare, they've helped with a lot. And there is this belief system that I can really resonate with that suggests that horses, just like humans, go through evolution and lifetimes. And if you've had any interaction with horses in your life, you've probably noticed that there's some horses that they just seem a bit like some people. They're just kind of doing their thing and they're just an animal. but you'll look in the eyes of some horses, and there's almost a glint and knowledge. And there's a belief that a unicorn is actually a horse that has gone through many lifetimes and has kind of understands the world, that infinite or that divine or that spiritual truth. And how we obviously identify a unicorn is it has that horn. And that horn is almost like a pillar of light coming from the third eye chakra, that divine guidance, that divine knowing, that divine wisdom. So you can work with unicorns. Unicorns are renowned for not liking the smell of artificial perfumes, not liking the connection with any kind of animal product. So you don't want to be wearing leather if you're trying to do unicorn work. But Blue Lotus could be a beautiful, graceful thing that could help you to kind of connect with unicorn wisdom if that's something that you're drawn to as well.
I love that. I got visions of a friend of mine who I went to school with, and even at school, she was always like mucking around with horses. That's what we always used to say. Oh, she's mucking around with horses because she was mucking out then. We met up again years later. She had a daughter around about the same time as I had Dex, who that has a brain tumor, although she's just this vibrant creature, and both she and her daughter just have this incredible affinity with horses. Horses just love them, and they take little. I'll say Grace. I'm sure it'll be fine. Grace, is the daughter, takes the horses and little Shetland ponies and stuff into old people's homes, and she dresses an elf and she puts antlers on the horses, or sometimes she'll put a unicorn horn on this little Shetland pony. And if ever there was somebody who is just, she is a horse person, and then it's people's genius, isn't it? Some people just have these ways that they're incredibly clever at doing one thing. And that is one of the things in the iconography of the Blue Lotus, actually. So it's aligned to lots of different gods, some of whom you've just never heard of, including the god called Happy. Well, there's two gods called Happy, actually, and in different ways, Blue Lotus is related to both of them. But Happy is, well, I kind of feel like the personification of Happy. He's got big pendulous boobs, fat belly, and he's the god of the inundation of the Nile. And his iconography is that he stands this side, that side. So there's two Happies, and he holds the water lily in what's called the Semitawi. And that is the joining of Upper and Lower Egypt. And he is the genius, so he represents the thing that only you can do, And I thought that's very much like that. If you're somebody who can, my sister's very good at tapping into dragons. You and she very good with crystals. Me, I'm just like, oh, it's pretty rock. It doesn't speak to me. Everybody's got their own thing, haven't they? So being able to tap into something like that, I would agree that is a Blue Lotus thing.
Another Egyptian god, lesser known Egyptian god that I know you've referred to before and we've discussed a little bit before was Nefertum. And I know that Nefertum is sometimes used as like a wish granter, and that you can, pop a bit of Blue Lotus on your hands and just like we would a birthday cake, make a wish and ask Nefertum to bring that. But can I ask you to expand a little bit on, I remember you having a bit more on Nefertum as well.
Oh, I don't want to go too much into this because this is a big part, but he is part of the creation story in Egypt, and I think it's really fascinating, actually. You know how sometimes you just go, you look and you go, I didn't know I had that. I cleared out Dexter's room and there was this book about Egyptian gods, and I went, where did you get that from? He went, I don't know, I've never seen it before, and it doesn't seem to have ever been read, but it's. And I opened it up and I was like, okay, thanks, bees, thanks for that. And here's the story of Nefertum. So within the Egyptian mythology, there are around about 2,000 different gods in their pantheon. Although what's interesting is now the more that we know about it, there is some sort of consensus that there's actually only one god, and that is Ray, and the rest are sort of rays of wisdom coming through, different, and that's almost how we translate it today. But I don't think anybody's really set on that in the actual Egyptian world to say that's the case, but there's a suspicion that that's the case. And there's lots of different creation stories, and Nefertum is he's at the beginning of time, and this is from the pyramid texts. At the beginning of time, God, Artem is the god of creation, decides, right, I want to create something. And I won't go deeply into the wording, but basically the gods are already around him, and they say, well, create something then. And so from the waters of Nun, which the waters of Nun is basically chaos, he created the world. And he did that by sending the blue water lily. And out of that, some say that he stepped out, Artem stepped out, or Nefertum stepped out. So he's the good and the best of Artem, Nefertum, stepped out, and his radiance created the world from there. But then there's other stories about Nefertum. So some say that he's the son of Ptah, who is also a creation god, and Bastet, who is a lioness or a cat. Now, Bastet is the goddess of perfume, and Nefertum is the god of beauty and perfume. So in the creation myth, when you twist the mythology, what they're saying is it was from fragrance that the world was born, which I think is absolutely fascinating. But also he has another possible mother. So sometimes you'll see like a syncretism between Bastet and Sekhmet. And Sekhmet is my guide. So she's a terrifying lion goddess of medicine, and she's the destroyer and destruction. Now, as the son of Sekhmet, he has another personification which becomes fascinating, because then he's Mahez. As well as Nefertum, he's Mahez, and Mahez is a lion god, and he is a destroyer. So then we're like, whoa, then he's the god of anger and destruction. And all of those things that you think, oh, Blue Lotus is just all these tranquil things. It becomes like, okay, so do we use it for anger? Do we use it for bloodshed? Do we use it for trauma? All of those things that he brings about. So then we have this opening of this, looking at all the different petals. Which way does it go in the sunshine? So yeah, and Nefertum is god of fragrance, god of happiness, god of beauty, and yeah, as a child actually he has another version as Harpocrates, who is a child god, his finger on his lips. And so children, we think, probably went and took offerings to Nefertum to say, and always, by the looks of it, a blue lotus means offering a devotion to the god of beauty, to the god of all of those things that you can create yourself.
In magic and spellcraft and creative visualization, from listening to you talk then and Nefertum's role and where the blue lotus came into it, I think blue lotus would be an amazing oil to reach for when you want to manifest something out of nothing. Not necessarily we're like, oh, well, my job's going well and I want to, or my business is going well and I want to expand. But when you're like, I want to meet a new partner and there's no one on the horizon, or I need to find this money to pay this bill and I don't know where it's going to come from. Maybe this would be a really great time to lean into the magic of blue lotus and see what can come from the expansive abyss of nothingness.
And chaos.
Yeah.
None is chaos. And if we're really going from the point of view of the doctrine of signatures, because that's where we're headed now, really, isn't it? The water that it grows in can't be very deep. We grow water lilies here, and we have the strong silent one got very involved in measuring how deep the pond would be to make sure that we could get water lilies. So between 30 to 60 centimetres. So if you think about how the flood water would have come across the marshes, and each year suddenly, whoo, they've all come out again. So, but it has to be still water and stagnant water. So we say that it's on the Nile. It isn't really. It's on the marshes that went out. So the Nile flows, but then the water comes out and it sits stagnant on the sides. So of course, then that looks like it's the Nile, I guess. But so if life has become stagnant, and the stagnation, and actually when we look at the pyramid texts, and we really kind of, one of the things that I was taught in the Melissa work is you always go, and what went before? So when you are feeling something, what went before? So you're always looking at the trigger. So when we see these stories about the of Ray and Artem talking about the Blue Lotus and bringing sunlight into the universe, what went before? Well, what went before was Artem was bored. He was bored, and he just didn't. He was like, I want something to happen. And the gods around him went, well, we'll make something happen then. And I think that that is really important. That like, so he looks at this stagnant water. I'm bored. It's sat like this for such a long time. We'll make something happen then.
Really amazing for stagnant energy in our lives when you kind of feel a little bit stuck. Now, there is one little thing I just want to give an honourable mention to. It's not something that resonates with me. I'm not sure if it's going to be your jam so much as well, but in our book, Gifts of Essential Oils, Vanessa Jean has a bit of a drawing to star beings, beings from Sirius or Arcturus and different things like that. She feels that this is a great oil to help with that kind of connection. I know the Egyptians had some connections to different constellations as well. My realm is what's on the earth and what's within our solar system. Anything beyond our solar system just doesn't resonate with me. But if people are interested in that, Blue Lotus could be really great for that. I don't know if you've got anything to add on that comment.
Yeah, I think anything to do with bees tends to be Pleiades, and that does take me seamlessly into what I wanted to say earlier. So,
Get it off your chest.
So I want to talk about 3 things that will happen now within my new school before you and I come back in February, because we're going to have a break now, aren't we?
Yeah.
So within January, as I say, we'll be working with Blue Lotus, and people can come and get that piece of work. But also the Egyptian Mystery School opens within the Aromatic Mystery School. And I am so privileged and honoured to have met with an Egyptologist who is a tour guide over in Egypt, who knows an awful lot about oils. And she said, should we do some classes? And I was like, yeah. She went, did you think about it? Well, think about it. I went, I thought about it. So in January, she's going to do her first 2 classes. Now, these are live classes, and you can come along and ask her questions. She speaks beautiful English, and she's just like a poet to listen to. Her name's Noha Ali, and she's doing 2 workshops in January. The first is her specialist area that she did at university, which is the astroarchaeology of the temples. So which temples along the Nile, which is where she takes her people on her tours, which temples, what are they aligned to? Which stargates are they aligned to? Which planets? And so when we know about the planet and that it's aligned to, what's the sort of energy that's coming down? So that's the first one, and that is in on January the 11th. And interestingly, I said, well, what oil should we use? And she went, oh, Blue Lotus. And this was before she knew I was working with it. So if you're doing the new Blue Lotus work with me, get the oil out and come and do Naha's work as well. And then later in the month, January 25th, she is going to talk about a theory that each of the temples, that there are certain temples along the Nile that were the journey was created to go up through the energy centers. So in today's parlance, we would say chakras because we know them best through the Hindu. But in Egyptology, they're called Sefer Ra. And so these different temples align to different chakras. So then what she's also done is she's looked into different temple walls and looked for the recipes for the oils as to how to blend the oils to activate that particular energy center. So the thinking is, and this is not her thinking, this is quite well accepted from around about the 1920s now, that people would journey through their lifetime, go to the first one, which is with the Knum. Knum is the potter god, and he creates the physical body and the car to go and be linked into that, and then through life would work through these different energy centers to be able to raise what's called the Merkaba. So the Merkaba was the vehicle that would carry you into the afterlife. And so these different energy centers, different temples have different rays to activate different energy centers until they accumulate in this Merkaba that was part of being able to take you into the afterlife. And she's found all the different oils that work with that. So I'm just like, I'm so excited, I'll tell you. So that is on January the 25th. Before that, go on.
I for one, I want to be there and hear what she has to say as well. Let me ask a logistical question. One of the problems that often plagues us is, unfortunately, Australia, Europe, and North America, one of us is asleep all of the time. If someone can't make it live, can I get hold of a replay by subscribing beforehand?
Yes. Yes, they will. And we've tried to get it to a point where everybody's kind of only just waking up or only just going to sleep or very awake. So we've tried really hard, and they're on Saturdays as well. So people are less likely to be at work. So, yeah. So that's the Egyptian Mystery School. On the 21st of December, this is unrelated to Blue Lotus. I feel like I should take my hair off to say this, but this is me and a lady called Frances Bartlett, who you've all seen on different videos that we've done, are holding a winter solstice ceremony to activate the cedars of Lebanon. Because we have a friend, Nicole Abu Khalil, who is the Lebanese director for NAHA, and she is in the middle of this awful stuff in the Middle East in the war. Now, luckily, they have a ceasefire now for 60 days, so we will pray hard that it will hold. But the bees came to me in a dream and said, what you need to do is activate the cedars of Lebanon. And I was like, yes, that's what I need to do. Wait, what? So I talked to Frances, and as you know, she works with music. We came up with this lovely idea of this joint ceremony, and we will all be being together on the winter solstice to activate the cedars of Lebanon. Now that is a free event. The others are all paid. The Blue Lotus work is paid. The two things with no hat are paid. But this is a free ceremony that I hope that everybody will come and work with. And again, I'll put the details on my link tree. So click on my link tree and it will take you to it to get your ticket. Tickets are free, but I just need to make sure that I'm not going over the amount that Zoom will let in the door.
Now, I'm glad you got that off your chest. There are two things I need to get off my chest, because we always talk about these with every single oil. What chakra for Blue Lotus?
Brow chakra, crown chakra.
Yeah, I would say brow is very, a very particular one. The challenge I have, there are different colored lotuses and lilies, as we know. My problem is I refuse to work with adulterated oils, and getting quality pink or yellow or anything like that may be a problem, but it does really connect with that third eye chakra, with that unicorn energy and that type of thing as well. I'd also go for what's known as the soul star chakra, the energy center that's kind of normally seen as being a bit more of a pearl color. And whereas your crown chakra is your individual connection to your spirituality, your soul star chakra is that connection to the universal gateway. So what I mean by that is feeling universally and spiritually connected to all of humanity, all of the plants, all of the stone people, all of the animals, all the angels, all of the ascendants, all of the guides, all that type of thing. So I think it is such a spiritual oil. It's going to give you strong connection to that. So I would say soul star chakra, but if we're going for the basic 7, definitely the brow. What about astrologically, Liz?
Moon, I think. I feel like you're going to say an asteroid that I don't know, so I'm going to hand this over to you. Yes, what?
Yes, if I had to pick I'm trying to think of a better term rather than basic planet. But the moon would work. But I've seen some references to Lotus actually being. I'm like this harbinger of knowledge, and I just read through all these books, and I never remember where I see things. But a reference associating Juno, Zeus's wife, with the lotus. Now, if I want to tie this into a little package bow, astrologically, where Juno is in our lives and in our birth chart, she represents our commitment, our loyalty, and our steadfastness. Now, normally in relationships, and if we think about Juno and Jupiter, Jupiter had, well, a lot of love to give. He was out there cheating on her with everyone, but she remained loyal. Not as this weak, kind of flimsy, oh, well, my husband's cheating on me, but on, no. I made an oath of marriage. I made a commitment. I'm going to stick to that. And so she is very much about that commitment of marriage. But when we talk about what we've discussed today in Blue Lotus, how there is that focus and that divine commitment to what is important to you and not letting other people to waver that as well. So I find that works really well with Juno. Plus, an animal that is sacred to Juno is the peacock. Now, the peacock, of course, has many different aspects. First of all, those eyes on each tail feather are seen to be all-knowing. So then we get that brow connection and that spiritual chakra connection of being able to see everything as well, but also a protection. You can actually, and I've used this sometimes for protection, there's lots of different visualizations you can do, but send the peacock feather behind you. So you have your own peacock tail. Everything's being seen. Really great for in combating things like the evil eye, because there may be one evil eye, but you've suddenly got 1,000 eyes looking back and keeping an eye on everything, all seeing, all observing, missing nothing as well. So I tied in, and whenever I'm doing Juno work, this asteroid goes retrograde once a year, test with them what we're committed to, especially in our romantic relationships. It's another great time to work with Blue Lotus then as well.
We've missed a really obvious one. It's got to be tied to the sun, hasn't it? It comes up and opens to the sun. If what you're saying is correct, that it is Juno or Hera in Hellenistic speak, then that her sort of psychopathy, if you like, is jealousy and spite. So if that were true, that would make it a good thing to use for jealousy and spite. And I can test that one. I can't do IBS, but I could test that one. So that'd be interesting to research. Yeah.
Love that for sure. Now, we always say, is this an oil you need? I would say if you're into the physicality and the health promotion of this oil, probably not. If you love skincare, it's probably a nice addition. You could make some really interesting skincare products with it. But if you're really into doing anything spiritual, I think this has to be in your arsenal. Would you agree?
Yeah, and actually we've missed a point that it's aphrodisiac too. So if somebody is finding that they don't feel very sexy, or they're having problems with sexuality, and we'll go more into that into my course. I'm not going to go there now, but it is very good for sexuality.
Well, this out of curiosity, this question popped into my head. Is there any link to it into homosexual sexuality or comfort with that as well, or is it just an overall sexual one, you'd say?
Well, okay. So we
Without
have
giving
talked
away
about
your paid content.
We've talked about Hercules. That's homosexual, right? But he goes with the women. And I would say no. I would say in the Egyptian parlance, no. Until the 4th century BC, it was all women's, and then it became women's and men's. But there's no sense of homosexuality that I can see. But then I wasn't looking for it.
Could suggest it does have a water connection, things to do with fluidity of sexuality, fluidity of gender. It could be a good supporting one as well. Again, not worrying about the world is saying, seeing what the world is saying around you, staying connected to your truth. It could be really powerful in that way as well. Now, let me do some kind of caretaking for what is happening. Liz has referred to a couple of things from now. So this is our final episode for 2024. This is episode number 79. We've got through 79 different essential oils, Liz. Can you believe that?
And if you'd have had your way, we'd have been working all the way up to Christmas.
We would have been. But we're going to have a little break, a forced break, which is quite all right. We may kind of appear in your podcast feed or on your YouTube feed in January and early February with the occasional oil that we might go, oh, hold on, we've got another one we want to squeeze in there, but we're not going to be as weekly and regularly. But what you're going to find near the end of February, we're going to burst out of the muddy water like a blue lotus with Elizabeth has her school coming out. We have a second incarnation of this podcast, and we're going to let you know exactly what that will look like. So we're not going anywhere. Stay tuned to our social media and where you follow us, and we will let you know what's going to be happening with that. But I want to thank everyone. We have had some beautiful people that will reach out to us. They'll make comments. They'll send us an email just saying, I'm amazed how many people listen to this and love it. I got a compliment this week to someone who goes, I love listening to you and Liz each night. When I can't sleep, I put it on. And I don't know if that was a compliment or an insult, because I don't know if we're boring her to sleep. But she said, no, I seem to actually absorb the information while I'm drifting off to sleep, and I really, really enjoy it. So thank you so much for that. Is there any final things that we need to let people know before we go?
No. Just to echo what you said, to say thank you so much for all the support. I mean, we've had nothing but amazing support this year. You know, sometimes between you and I, sometimes we get quite nasty comments on any other work that I've done, but just none with this. So please don't take that as a temptation. But thank you so much for all the support, and have a happy Christmas or Hanukkah or however you are celebrating, and wishing us all the best for 2025.
Very much so. We know that you enjoyed this episode. Why? Because this is the most rehearsed episode we've ever had. Would you believe we recorded this episode about 4 weeks ago, and then when I go to hit stop record at the end, the only option that was there was start record. So Liz and I had a 90-minute conversation just for the two of us, but hopefully second round was better.
But there's more to that story, isn't there? Because then I thought, oh, well, we're redoing it the next week. So I put all my makeup on again, and he said, no, it's citronella.
From both myself and Liz and Fellowship in Essential Oils, enjoy the holiday season, enjoy the solstice, get your oils out, and hopefully, if you've been good, Santa might bring you a brand new oil. We'll talk to you very, very soon. Take care and blessed be.
Bye-bye.